Hi, welcome to another edition of the Principal Mouthpiece Trombone comparison videos. Coming at you today from where I teach at the Laundry School of Music in our Hamburger room, which is where we have this beautiful little organ for students to practice on. It's also the same room that we do our brass auditions in, so I thought it would be a good chance to test out some solo literature and kind of see what it feels like on the other side of the process as I listen back. My career is primarily as a soloist and chamber musician, so today instead of focusing on the orchestral literature, I'm going to see how this lovely lineup of mouthpieces made for principal trombonists sounds like on some of my solo rep. We're going to be listening to Arvo Fratres, the cello version, just the first 45 seconds or so of it. I also have my daily driver mouthpiece here, Laskey-59D. One I haven't played in these comparison videos yet, but I thought it'd be nice to get kind of a good basis of sound for what I do and what I've chosen to do from my normal mouthpiece first before diving into the world of these principal trombone mouthpieces. So we'll start with that. This is a Laskey-59D. It has the non-italic writing on it, if you can see, which means it's from the older generation of handmade by Scott mouthpieces. So again, that's the usual mouthpiece I use. It's one that I've chosen kind of for clarity of sound and articulation and dynamic capability within the context of being more of a soloist and chamber musician. Let's hear how it compares with some of the principal trombone mouthpieces. We'll start, as always, with this Greg Black 5GL with the 277 board, which was designed for John Kitzman of the Dallas Symphony. Feels a little bit harder to do the widest leaps and maybe a touch less centered on some of the upper notes, but I can't wait to hear back and hear what that sounds like. Next we're going to try the first generation Sasha Romero mouthpiece from LI Brass, which has a .285 shank. It's one of the wider shanks of all these. Still has that beautiful kind of Art Deco-esque design to it that I love. Very interesting feel to it. Some things felt really clear, and some things felt like I had to move a lot within the mouthpiece to try to go towards the sound I was looking for. Yeah, that's with that mouthpiece in particular. It's always one that I feel like if I had a lot of time to invest in it and get more out of it, Could be super special, so I'll have to think about that. Next we have the Bousfield S mouthpiece. Bousfield, of course, having been doing a lot of solo work as well as his orchestral work throughout his entire career. So we'll see if some of that aspect comes across in this kind of like virtuosic articulation exercise. Yeah, it feels slightly easier to control, but at the same time it almost feels a little bit raw to me on the tops and bottoms. So I've noticed before, when I play the orchestral literature, I like to keep on both of the rubber bands for the Bousfield mouthpiece, but I will notice that there's a pretty striking difference in sound when I take just one of them off. And in all honesty, the second one seems kind of fused onto the instrument right now, so taking one off is the only real chance I have. But let's see what the Bousfield mouthpiece with one of these rubber, tiny rubber rings removed from the shank does. It's quite interesting. It has a much lighter, much more articulate feel to it, and what I feel like I gain in control of kind of the upper note, I almost feel like I lose a little bit of core on the lowest note of the articulations. But again, can't wait to listen back. Next we have Steve Witzer's Hammond design mouthpiece. I've reached out to Hammond to get some specs on this mouthpiece, but they haven't reached back yet. So hopefully one day soon I'll know more of what I'm working with when I play this. Steve had a beautiful solo album called Among Friends, which has some of the most gorgeous lyrical playing I've heard, especially in like his Schumann Romanzen interpretations. And let's see how that comes across, that kind of lyricism that I felt with this mouthpiece, with this more articulate kind of ostinato style. Yeah, there's something there in the body of the sound that feels really nice. This, other than my normal mouthpiece, felt the most under control of the mouthpieces I've used so far. Next up we have the Greigo-Alessi 7F, the smallest of the Alessi rim sizes, but also the deepest cup. I tend to like a deep cup in my playing. Let's see how kind of the extra mass that I always feel in the Alessi mouthpieces, and it always seems like it takes a little bit more air to get going than some of these lighter mouthpieces. Let's see how that acts with the articulation study. There's some really nice feeling going through the notes, with the middle note in particular. I felt like I was maybe getting the most sound on the middle note in that, which is usually one of the hardest things to do with these kind of florid articulation passages, is to really define the middle super clearly. But then again, I notice when even I listen to string players, very often you just kind of hear bottom and top, and then the middle is like, it's filled in, but it's kind of hard to like transcribe exactly what you're hearing if one was to do such an exercise. Another Alessi style mouthpiece, but one made for my first teacher, Carl Mazzio from Greg Black. Again, this has a much wider rim. It's more like a 3G rim, but it's not as deep as like the F mouthpiece or even this Greg Black 5G, which I think is the deepest mouthpiece I've been using. So it's a touch on the shallower side, but it is quite heavy. By grams, it might be the heaviest of the mouthpieces that I'm playing on. Let's see how that goes with this. Felt pretty good, especially the softer dynamics. When I started pushing the dynamics a little bit more towards the middle and the end, I started to feel like I could start to hear a little bit of a sibilant sound or a tonguing sound on the feedback I was getting from the horn. Which, when you're playing solo and chamber recitals, I always aim for a sense of clarity in the pitch as much as possible. It's much the case that I'm usually not playing for people who are, 60, 90, 100 feet away, but sometimes I'm playing for people that are like 6 feet, 8 feet in front of me. And when you get a lot of that extra hiss and stuff in the sound at the close range distance, normally doesn't matter in an orchestra, it can make a difference to an audience member that's sitting just like a couple of paces in front of you. So, I tend to go for mouthpieces that give me the clearest, most immediate sound, even if they're not as much of like the traditional orchestral breadth and width approach. Speaking of that approach, the next mouthpiece we have is the new Laskey 60 symphonic model. Just feeling it in my hand, I can tell that even though the rim is wider, it feels it's like significantly less heavy. I would say it's about 2/3 the weight of this Greg Black Mazzio mouthpiece. And I would say out of all the mouthpieces I'm playing so far, funnily enough, this one might be the lightest for its rim size and everything else. It's right up there with the Bousfield mouthpiece in terms of like lack of weight on it, or lightest possible weight. Let's see how this sounds on this. I gotta say, that felt really good to play. It feels like if I wanted to play this mouthpiece for this type of repertoire, I might have to like go start running again, make my lungs a little bit stronger. Like, it takes a lot of air, but I think that the sound on that felt really good. Lastly, we have the Greigo-Alessi 1D, the widest rimmed mouthpiece of them all. And definitely the mouthpiece I would pick if I wanted to just like absolutely play all out, like Shostakovich 7 CSO style or something like that. This would be the piece I would use to achieve that sound. Let's see how it acts on some like lighter, more recital appropriate fare. Again, these wider mouthpieces, these bigger mouthpieces, they have a really good feel to them, but it does feel like endurance would become an issue rather quickly. And I know it's like I just tried 8 mouthpieces in a row or whatever, but I do get the feeling from start to finish within the excerpt itself that I'm losing the most vitality and strength on these 2 largest pieces, which is, maybe something I need to get used to, because I have a sneaking feeling that the sound on that might be really good. Now that we made it this far, let's go back and listen to my normal mouthpiece one more time, kind of comparing it first to the smallest and then finishing up right after having done the biggest. Yeah, I can feel some of the fatigue from the larger mouthpieces start to seep in, and from just the sheer amount of mouthpieces we played in this over time. But I gotta feel like the notes feel the most well-defined on the low range on this one right now. So yeah, that's Fratres on all these mouthpieces. Thank you for listening. I think we'll probably get to maybe something like Mahler 3 and Brahms 1 soon using these mouthpieces. I'm here at Longy for another 5 days, and the rooms are really lovely looking, so I might as well make another couple videos. Thanks for watching.